Welcome to the Connecting Green Hydrogen Japan 2023 online masterclass, where innovative minds and visionary leaders converge to chart a course for a sustainable energy future. My name is Kayla, Content Analysis and Leader Associates. Today, we are honored to have Ms. Andrea Triki, a distinguished senior expert for hydrogen policy and strategy at the German Energy Agency, gracing our event. The agency embodies Germany's energy transition commitment, serving as the nation's premier hub for energy efficiency, renewable sources, and intelligent energy systems. It's pivotal in shaping and executing Germany's energy and climate policies. Ms. Andrea's insights into Germany's energy landscape, especially in hydrogen, are invaluable. Her exploration of Germany's newly published hydrogen strategy will offer a unique chance to grasp the lessons, challenges, and the success that have shaped the nation's energy journey. Hi, Ms. Andrea. The floor is open for you right now. Let's welcome.
Thanks, Kayla. Thank you for having me. 1 second. I'm sharing the screen in a minute. So as Kayla nicely pointed out, I'm going to derive some insights from the German sustainable hydrogen journey for you today. And I'm happy that I can present some insights from the newly published national hydrogen strategy that Germany has just recently announced. Before I'm going to dive into this, I would like to very shortly also introduce the German Energy Agency a bit further. We are a center of competency for the applied energy transition and climate protection. We are working on topics such as energy efficiency, renewable energies, integrated energy systems, and there also obviously hydrogen plays a role. We consider ourselves to be a mediator between politics, industry, science, and civil society, and we're working across ministries and in constant dialogue with market participants. We're thereby having the clear goals to support the federal government in the realization of climate and energy goals and its strategies, such as the hydrogen strategy, for instance, and to also contribute towards factual communication towards end users and suppliers, and the realization of energy efficiency and renewable energy potentials, including also driving forward system integration. Coming now to the National Hydrogen Strategy, I wanted to first give you an overview of the basic motivation behind the strategy. And obviously, I think you're all aware that besides renewable energies and energy efficiency, hydrogen and its derivatives can play a key role in reaching climate neutrality. And Germany has set itself the goal to be climate neutral by 2045. So this is a very short time frame ahead. And hence building up the hydrogen market and the hydrogen use ready in time is a core pillar of Germany's energy transition efforts. But I think it's also clear that besides climate action, also technological leadership is a strong motivation for Germany in that regards, as it currently is a strong exporter of energy technologies, and also with the hydrogen technologies arriving, there are great opportunities that Germany is eager to take. The first national hydrogen strategy had been published already in June 2020 and focused on kickstarting the hydrogen market ramp up. And I think one can say that it successfully managed to do so. And this has been shown also in implementation reports that were issued in September 2021 and in May 2022. And as just stated in the beginning, a new hydrogen strategy is available now since July 2023. And it focuses on accelerating the hydrogen market ramp up after the hydrogen market development has been successfully kickstarted. But maybe having a glance on where we are at the moment. In Germany, we started with an annual hydrogen demand of 55 terawatt hours, which was mostly satisfied by hydrogen derived from steam methane reforming, hence a fossil-based hydrogen. Hydrogen is currently mainly used in refining and industrial processes for producing ammonia, methanol, and petroleum, for instance. And Germany currently has an approximately electrolyzer capacity installed of 70 megawatt. However, since the first national hydrogen strategy, many projects have been announced, more than 110 hydrogen projects to be exact. And these announced projects could result into an electrolyzer capacity of about 5 gigawatts in 2030, if fully implemented. So I think this already explains quite well why the new focus of the National Hydrogen Strategy lies on acceleration and making this final investment decisions happening. In order to do so, the updated hydrogen strategy increases its ambition and creates a much stronger focus along 4 fields of action. For 2030, the new targets comprise an electrolyzer target of at least 10 gigawatts installed electrolyzer capacity domestically by 2030. It further clarifies that also a hydrogen core network of 1,800 kilometers of refurbished or newly built pipelines shall be built up until 2030, and that also the expected demand in 2030 ranges between 95 and 130 terawatt hours per year. As I said, it further clarified and prioritized some fields of action. It does so by ensuring targeting the availability of sufficient hydrogen. This is the first field of action. I'm going to dive a bit deeper into that in a second. It also focuses on supporting the development of efficient hydrogen infrastructure. It intends to support the implementation of hydrogen applications and to create a further enabling regulatory framework and to have good framework conditions in place. Along these fields of actions, there are several short and mid-term measures identified, but also there is the picture ahead until 2030 with several also long-term activities. Let's dive into the field of actions. Ensuring availability of sufficient hydrogen is one of the priorities of the National Hydrogen Strategy 2023. And Germany, as I said, doubled its domestic electrolyzer target and now also further aims at diversifying imports. The new domestic electrolyzer target is to have at least 10 gigawatts of installed electrolyzer capacity by 2030. But Germany also puts out the vision that the majority of electrolyzers shall further be located and operated in a system-friendly way by 2030. And this is something that is new to the National Hydrogen Strategy compared to the first version. And in this graph, you can see several support instruments that the German government has already put forward or intends to put forward in order to reach the expansion target for electrolyzer capacity by 2030. It comprises tenders for power system-based electrolysis, new funding schemes, for instance, for offshore wind electrolysis, but also further research and development support, for example, by the Realabore der Energiewende. However, despite this enhanced domestic electrolyzer target, I think what also got much clearer in the National Hydrogen Strategy 2023 is that Germany will depend to large amounts of imported hydrogen, and it further clarifies this by stating that this import ratio will rate between 50 to 70% of the total demand. So until 2030, the majority of hydrogen imports is expected to be ship-based and in form of derivatives. And here Germany is focusing mainly on ammonia and trying to identify instruments and leverages to support this import way via ammonia. And from 2030 on, it is expected that also pipeline-based imports of gaseous hydrogen from Europe and also neighboring regions will be possible and feasible. Germany's key instruments to supporting the import of sustainable hydrogen are an import strategy, which is still currently in the making and tries to also support a diversified import strategy and also make sure that the infrastructure needs for this import strategy are in place. Further, I think maybe you've heard of H2 Global. Germany has put forward several funding instruments that also support international hydrogen projects. H2 Global and H2 Up are the most prominent examples in that regards. And also Germany has already conducted several bilateral hydrogen partnerships and dialogues and will continue to do so and to also strengthen dialogue in these fora. The second stream of action intends to develop an efficient hydrogen infrastructure. And I already mentioned that a new goal has been introduced of the developing a hydrogen core network comprising 1,800 kilometers of converted and newly built pipelines by 2030. This core network shall be the basis for further expanding and connecting the German grid also to the European infrastructure. It's expected that a European hydrogen backbone will develop in parallel and will also comprise about 4,500 kilometers pipelines throughout Europe by 2027 and 28. And these two networks that will be connected are also the basis for further expansion alongside certain priority corridors to the north and to the Baltic Sea and the offshore potentials that are lying there, but also to the south and then the adjacent regions in Northern Africa, for instance. For the import of hydrogen derivatives, the construction of hydrogen-ready import terminals is foreseen and is already happening in the German coast. And it's also foreseen that a sustainable and safe shipping routes shall be brought forward. And I think that's also something that is new compared to the last version, that also shipping capacities and the need to bring forward sustainable energy solutions for shipping is also being looked at in closer detail. Two other aspects that I want to point your attention towards are that Germany is also developing a cross-sectoral infrastructure planning approach. Its so-called systematic energy strategy tries to link the infrastructure planning of hydrogen infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, and gas infrastructure, as well as heating infrastructure, because I mean, at the end, they all are interlinked and have effects on each other. Also something that Germany will continue to work on is the question of how to finance the hydrogen infrastructure. And it specifically tries to find ways to avoid prohibitively high network tariffs in a startup phase, because I mean, it can be expected that the hydrogen network does not have that many clients, as the German hydrogen strategy has a rather prioritized approach regarding applications. So the question is, who is going to pay for the buildup of this infrastructure? Looking now at the expected demands and the key applications, I already mentioned that Germany has a rather prioritized approach here. And it further clarifies the key applicants in the National Hydrogen Strategy 2023. Industry has always been at the core of the National Hydrogen Strategy. 2045, the demand for hydrogen in industry is expected to reach between 290 to 440 terawatt hours per annum. And the core clients in industry for hydrogen use are chemical and steel industry. And the focus here lies on the replacement of fossil feedstock that are needed in the chemical and steel industrial processes, but also to a more limited amount, hydrogen can also play a role in process heat. Regarding transport, Germany has reiterated that hydrogen can play an important role in decarbonizing the transport sector. Besides battery electric vehicles, fuel cell vehicles play an important role, as well as e-fuels. The focus for e-fuels, however, lies on aviation, shipping, and military, which are considered to be rather hard to abate and heavy-duty vehicles. Something that's, I think, maybe a bit further developed in the new strategy is the use of hydrogen in the power system. The expected demand in 2045 for the conversion into electricity reaches 80 to 100 terawatt hours per annum. So Germany is eager to also develop hydrogen readiness for CHP and gas-fired power plants, and has already put several measures into place for doing so. But it also designs new tenders, for instance, for so-called H2 sprinter and renewable hydrogen hybrid power plants. Coming to the last action point, which is called creating good framework conditions. I think Germany here realized in order to accelerate, it also needs to look at debureaucratizing the permitting and planning processes in the hydrogen field, and also continue working on internationally recognized standards and certification schemes. With regards to accelerating planning and permitting, it looks at simplifying and digitalizing planning and permitting procedures for electrolyzers, terminals, but also refueling infrastructure. And it intends also to increase the capacities and resources in the administrations so that they can also process this kind of projects faster. The key measure to bringing this forward is an Hydrogen Acceleration Act, which is currently designed and expected still in this year. With regards to the international discourse, Germany's engagement for clear and robust sustainability standards and certification schemes will continue. Germany intends to develop clear requirements for blue hydrogen, for instance, in its carbon management strategy, which is currently in the making, and to also evaluate existing sustainability standards and criteria, including, for instance, also water and land use issues, but also social requirements, and to adopt them accordingly. And it will further continue to engage for the development of internationally recognized and robust methodology for calculation of greenhouse gas footprints attached to traded hydrogen, as this is one of the preconditions for developing an international hydrogen market and trade. Coming to my main conclusions on the German hydrogen strategy update, hydrogen is an important element in Germany's pathway towards climate neutrality, but technological leadership is also a strong motivation. I think it's good to keep this in mind. After having successfully kickstarted the German hydrogen market, the new strategy focuses on acceleration and even plans to bring forward a Hydrogen Acceleration Act to support this goal. The National Hydrogen Strategy 2.0 provides a more coherent and focused framework with enhanced targets and clear priority fields of action. I also think that the clear targets, the transparent demand projections, and the reiterated focus of green hydrogen and key hydrogen applications provide a strong investment signal, and that hydrogen infrastructure gain more attention is a good thing because of its central role in dissolving the chicken and egg dilemma. Finally, I want to reiterate that sustainability standards and certifications stay a German priority for the international hydrogen discourse and are an important prerequisite for making international hydrogen trade happening. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to our Q&A session.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for your very informative presentation. Meanwhile, we have some questions for you and look forward to your reply. The first one is the German hydrogen strategy emphasizes the prioritization of specific sectors for hydrogen utilization. Could you delve into the considerations that led to the identification of these sectors as crucial for advancing the energy transition within Germany?
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to. Renewable hydrogen will come at significant cost premium, and at least in an early phase, it will be limited in quantity. I think this is the key assumption that underlies the German sector prioritization approach. And accordingly, the German government has identified its priority fields based mainly on the following question: are there cheaper technological alternatives available for the respective use case or not? And if you look at this with two examples, maybe in the heating and steel sector, for instance, in the heating sector, the deployment of renewable hydrogen would be feasible. However, for the decarbonization of buildings, several other options are available and cheaper. Renovation, heat pumps, renewable district heating, just to name a few. And in the steel sector, on the other hand, there are not many options available for replacing fossil coke used in the process of making steel from iron. So hydrogen can be used as a feedstock here to reduce iron ore, and is one of the rare sustainable solutions for doing so. This is why the steel industry is one of the priority applications in the German national hydrogen strategy, while the heating sector is not. And this is what we also usually call the hard-to-abate sector approach. So Germany is really focusing on hard-to-abate sectors when it comes to hydrogen application.
Thanks. You please.
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention that I think there's other reasons also behind this. And first, we are in an early phase of the market development in which hydrogen still needs a lot of support from the government. So I think also financially, it obviously makes sense to concentrate on some key applications. But also when we look at acceleration efforts that are necessary, having a more focused approach helps to treat these prioritized sectors with a higher urgency. So this is where we come back to the acceleration and making permitting and planning also faster.
Yeah. Thanks. And drawing from your extensive experience in the German hydrogen landscape, how might insights gained from Germany's sector-focused approach offer valuable guidance for Japan's efforts to effectively integrate hydrogen into its unique energy landscape?
Yeah, so first, I think, let me say that I'm not an expert on Japan's energy landscape, but I'm happy to try to make some comparisons and draw conclusions, but feel free to contest my assumptions or correct me. I think what is clear that overall the Japanese and German energy landscape are very different and unique in their own way, geographically, climatologically, regarding the established industrial energy infrastructure. They are different. And I think this is what we also see reflected when we look at the Japanese hydrogen strategy compared to the German hydrogen strategy. It sets different targets, priorities, and just has very different approach, I would say. But I think there are two elements where I think the German and Japanese case are maybe similar in a way and could learn from each other. And this is first that both our countries will probably be net importers of hydrogen also in the future. We are currently also strong importers of fossil energies, and in the transition towards cleaner energies, I think we will still continue to do so. So I think one thing that can be learned from Germany's approach in that regard is that it makes sense for hydrogen deficit countries such as Germany and Japan to supplement their hydrogen strategies with an import strategy, which the German government is currently developing, to look at what infrastructure needs do we have, how can we diversify imports to be more resilient, what energy carriers are attractive to us, and what port infrastructure do we hence need to develop. These are core issues for countries such as Japan and Germany, I would say. And another thing is where I think Germany and Japan can relate to each other is to also look more detailedly on the stabilization and flexibilization benefits that hydrogen can exert on a power system. Both in Japan and Germany, the injection of renewable energy into the electricity grid is increasing, which is good news from a climate perspective, but it's also challenging for like the stabilization of the grid. So I think with the German hydrogen strategy 2023, Germany tries to also reintroduce renewable power plants into the system that are, however, more controllable. And this is where hydrogen can play an important role. But also the more system-friendly approach that Germany is bringing forward to also look at where can we locate electrolyzers so that they can flexibilize energy surpasses, for instance, is a good way to go forward.
Yeah, thanks. And the third question is that German government has increased the focus on hydrogen infrastructure. Considering the varying market conditions, how might a similar approach address challenges specific to Japan and foster the development of robust hydrogen infrastructure?
Yeah. Indeed, I think it's an important aspect of the new national hydrogen strategy that this got much more concrete and that there was even an own target being introduced. I think this gives, again, the investors more clarity in that regards and gives a strong political signal. But let me differentiate between the domestic infrastructure that is planned to be built up and the import infrastructure. Because I think when it comes to the domestic infrastructure, this is an approach that could also work similarly in Japan. The German approach here is to build a pipeline network for gaseous hydrogen as a starting point for further expansion, and to here focus on repurposing of gas pipelines if possible, and to supplement this by newly built pipelines. And it has tasked the gas network operators with identifying and building this network. And the approach is quite straightforward. First, demand production centers are identified, and then potential hydrogen storage sites, as well as the necessary trajectories to link these sites. And in a second step, it is examined whether these trajectories, there are pipelines that can be repurposed or that need to be newly built. So I think this is like a general approach that could be also implemented in other geographical contexts. The greater difference arises when we look at import infrastructure. Germany is very comfortably located in Europe, surrounded by several other member states of the European Union. And so Germany has the advantage that it will probably also be able to rely on gaseous hydrogen imports via pipeline. This will probably not be the case for Japan, being an island and such. The import via ships and terminals will be much more important in that case. But also in that regards, I think what could be learned from is the approach of Germany to look at the infrastructure that is being built up now, which is LNG terminals, for instance, and to ask yourself the question, how can we make sure that the infrastructure that we are building up now can be used in future for the import of this green hydrogen and ammonia or methanol or whatever is most suitable to your specific case. And this is what we look at under the term hydrogen readiness, so to say. And this is being brought forward and also supplemented by building up also green terminals now for preparing when the bigger shipments will be delivered in some years to come. But also, I think looking more comprehensively at shipping and ports and the infrastructure that is there and how it needs to be adapted in order to account for these future deliveries of green energy carriers is something that needs to be done more, and that I think also Germany and Japan could work together.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Thanks for your very detailed answering. And the last question is, Could you elaborate on the pivotal roles that government and the industry stakeholders have played in shaping Germany's hydrogen policies and driving the implementation of key hydrogen projects?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, both stakeholder groups have been key in driving the hydrogen market development in Germany. Project announcements, as I said, increased immensely since the first launch of the German hydrogen strategy and have further increased since the basic regulatory framework conditions have been put in place and funding programs have been launched. But we are still in the beginning of the market developments with several still existing regulatory uncertainties, some economic risks, some technical risks that all remain. And this is where governments can come in to address these risks and to implement instruments and measures to mitigate them. And I believe the German government did advance in doing so. And also one should not underestimate the strong investment signals that can be portrayed by communicating the goals clearly, priority fields of action clearly, as has been achieved with the latest hydrogen strategy revision, I would say. And industry, on the other hand, is obviously the core partner of the German government in that regard. And there is a massive scale-up challenge ahead of us, the scale-ups that exceed the best deployment rates of solar PV, basically. So we need to work closely with industry in making this scale up happen and to identify remaining challenges and bottlenecks and then to further implement measures to mitigate them. So what the German government did is it set up a National Hydrogen Council, which is advising the German government in the implementation of national hydrogen strategy, and it includes industrial representatives. But it also introduced several lighthouse projects that bring research and industrial players together, and has obviously also designed specific funding schemes for supporting industry stakeholders in that transition towards the use of hydrogen, but also the production of hydrogen. So I would say industry is at the core of the German hydrogen market development. But I think we should also not underestimate the importance of other players such as science and civil society that both also play an important part in advising the German government in the implementation of the hydrogen strategy.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for your very informative and detailed answering. And as we wrap up this enlightening session and connecting Green Hydrogen Japan 2023, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Andrea Triki for sharing her profound insights. The knowledge and the perspective shared today will undoubtedly reverberate across borders, inspiring collaborative efforts towards a greener and more sustainable future.